Welcome to Managing a Windows 2012 Server Environment. I am your instructor, Robert McMillen. We are using for our study materials the Inside Out Windows Server 2012 book written by William R. Stanek. This is Part 5, Lab 1, Managing Active Directory and Security. We're going to discuss Active Directory architecture, designing the domain, organizing Active Directory, sites, and replication. Active Directory comes in the architecture comes in two different types, the physical architecture and the logical architecture. The physical architecture is the way your servers are laid out, the way your domain name is designed, such as we have widget llc.internal, that is our domain name, and physically we may have two servers in one office, another server in another office, and maybe 5 servers in a third office. So those servers could all have Active Directory on them, or one at each office could have Active Directory on them, and they'll replicate with each other. The logical architecture is a little bit different. That's the way that your computers communicate with the servers. The workstations don't really know what the physical layout is of your domain controllers. They only know the fact that you have domain controllers, what their names are, and what resources they have on them. So you need to design the logical and the physical architecture to work in a way where the computers run at the optimal speed and efficiency. When you design your domain, you're going to create 3 different things along with other items, but this particular case we're going to talk about global catalogs, trusts, and master roles. So a global catalog is a copy of your Active Directory, and that is going to exist on a domain controller that you decide to have a global catalog. Now, just because you have a domain controller doesn't mean it is a global catalog. You could choose to not make your domain controller a global catalog if you don't want to have all that additional replication traffic going on. But you do need to have at least one domain controller. I recommend at least 2 global catalog servers. That means that you have at least 2 servers that have a copy of Active Directory, which means all of your users, all of your passwords, all of your devices such as printers and computers and servers. It has all that information, at least on a couple of servers. Trusts are when you set up communication between servers or between forests. So the most common use of trusts is when one company merges with another company or there's a buyout that happens, and you need to have those forests trust each other. So you set up a trust in Active Directory domains and trusts, and where you say, I trust this other forest or this other domain. And when you do that, then users that are not in your Active Directory can now access your Active Directory resources and vice versa. So that is a very important thing when you're having 2 or more companies get together and you need to be able to see each other's resources. Master roles, those are the roles that there's 5 of them when you create an Active Directory infrastructure. And those 5 roles sit all on the first domain controller you install. There's the PDC, there's the RID master, the infrastructure master, the schema master. There's several different master roles, and most people on the operations master. And most people like to keep those master roles all on one server. If you have a very large environment, you may want to consider splitting up those roles into multiple different servers. The most important role is the schema master. The schema master allows changes to be made to Active Directory. So if the schema master is not online and you make a change to one domain controller, it will not show up or replicate with the other domain controllers until the schema master allows it and is back up and running. If any of those master roles are lost due to a domain controller that has those roles, it becomes corrupt, then you can seize those master roles from any domain controller so you can get things going once again. Organizing Active Directory, you've got forests, trees, and domains. And forests, trees, and domains are sort of in this particular order. It looks like a tree that's upside down. The forest level is at the top, the tree is next, and then the domain. So when you create your first Active Directory domain site in any organization, you create one of each. You have a forest, you have a tree, and a domain. So if you decide, you can create subdomains called child domains, and those are even further down the line. they are subordinate to the domains themselves. And you would want to do that if you have an Active Directory infrastructure where you have multiple offices and you have junior administrators taking care of these other offices. You don't want to give them the master domain administrator password, but you may want to allow them to manage their own domain in that location. So a tree is going to be basically just a bunch of domains. So you can create a bunch of domains, and then that can be all in one tree. A forest is going to be a separate organization. So every separate organization you have, such as if you own 5 companies, then you'll want to have a forest for each of those companies so they cannot talk to each other. So you have a separation for government and tax purposes. So the forest is at the top, next comes the tree, then the domain and the child domains. And that's basic Active Directory domain design. Active Directory objects include users, computers, printers, there's groups, various different types of groups. All are part of Active Directory objects, and you manage those through Active Directory users and computers. Organizational units are folders that you control in the Active Directory users and computers, and those organizational units allow you to help control those different users and groups and manage them, and you can make sub-organizational units as well, which I will show you how to do. Next thing is Active Directory sites and replication, but let's first go ahead and take a look at Active Directory users and computers and see what that looks like. So you open this in the tools under Server Manager, just like all the other administrative tools, or you can open it through Control Panel as well. Once we're in Active Directory users and computers, you see users, you see computers, you see domain controllers. So we're going to go ahead and click under marketing. Let's say that there's a new group under marketing, and we're going to call it a new organizational unit, and we're going to call it junior marketers. Click OK, and now you can see underneath sales is junior marketers. They may have different rights you may decide to assign to them. So let's go ahead and move user 21 into the junior marketers. You just drag and drop, it gives you a warning, click yes, and now user 21 is in the junior marketers. So you can create sub if you want. You don't want to get too out there, it gets very difficult to manage. Now these organizational units are tied to group policies, which I will show you in a little bit. These group policies get applied to the organizational units, so you can say the marketing salespeople get full administrator access to their computers, but the junior administrators only get guest access, so they can't make any changes. So that's one of the things of the hundreds of different types of group policies you can change and assign them to an organizational unit. Let's talk about Active Directory sites and replication. Talk about the importance of replication. When you have a domain controller, it needs to replicate with all the other domain controllers. If a domain controller loses communication with the rest of the domain controllers because it's offline or there's a communications problem for 6 months or more, then the other domain controllers tombstone that domain controller, which basically means it's aware of that domain controller, but it no longer relies on it for replication or for giving it any kind of information. So tombstoning a domain controller is a very difficult thing to overcome. You can take the tombstone off, but then it has to update, and many times that fails, and you end up having to just force taking off that tombstone domain controller. So it is very important that Active Directory does replicate to all the different domain controllers in any kind of a site to keep that from happening. Active Directory sites and services, to set up sites, that is the management tool that we use to set up sites in your organizations to make replication happen. And then I'll show you the replication options between sites and also troubleshooting replication. So let's take a look at Active Directory Sites and services, you can access that under the Tools menu in Server Manager as well. And in this particular case, we have two servers, DCO1 and DCO2. So let's start by showing the global catalog. If you right-click on the NTDS settings underneath the name of the server, go to Properties, you can see the global catalog box is checked. And if we do the same thing on DCO2, we can see it's checked there. If we want, we could uncheck it there, and it'll no longer keep a copy of the Active Directory on that particular site. So we can see that there's replication from and to DCO1. This is object information. This is the actual complete link information. Security. And then you have an attribute editor, which we're not going to get into at this time. So on the right-hand side of DCO1, you see DCO2. Let's go ahead and replicate with it. If we right-click and choose Replicate, let's see if it works or if it fails. It is trying to replicate now. And we can see that it's not going to actually work. If it was going to replicate, it would have done it immediately. And the reason is because DCO2 is powered off. So once DCO2 is powered back on again, we will be able to replicate between the two. Now we also have inter-site transports. You have IP and SMTP. By default, all replication takes place on IP. And IP basically is just TCP/IP replication. But that is sort of a heavy type of a protocol when you have a very slow type of a connection. I can see it finally timed out there at DCO2. So IP is a great type of replication when you have a fast connection from DCO1 to DCO2. In this particular case, that's the names of the two domain controllers. But when you have a very slow or unreliable type of connection, you'll want to create an inter-site transport using SMTP. SMTP uses a much lighter, it's the same as the email protocol, and it's a much lighter protocol. It will take a lot longer to replicate using SMTP, but it is more reliable when you have a slower type of a connection. So if we right-click on the replication properties, you can see that we've got some different options here, such as replication from server to default first site name, etc. You've got the object information, you've got the security information, and then you've got the attribute editor. So if we right-click and we choose a new site link, then from here we can go ahead and put in the names of our two sites. So we only have the one site right now, but let's go ahead and right-click, choose new site. We'll call it test site. We'll choose IP as our protocol. We'll click OK. Oh, we cannot have any spaces in that. Click OK. It has been created. All right. There's our test site. Right now we have no servers in it. So if we want, we'll go ahead and click on Properties on that. And we can see we can change some different things if we want. And we have servers. Properties on servers, and you've got the same kind of information. So now if we want to create a new site link, we can certainly do that. So those are the two different protocols, IP and SMTP, and here's the different servers, how to replicate. If you don't see the server that you want to replicate with there, then you can choose a new Active Directory domain connection and then find the name of the server and add it. So you can add it manually if you'd like. All right, in summary, we talked about Active Directory architecture, designing the domain, organizing Active Directory, sites, and replication. Next up is our final part in our series, Part 5, Lab 2, Users and Groups, Group Policy, and Resultant Set of Policy.